nights in the sukkah, please do let me know, and we'll definitely make a plan to have you joining with us. We talked about the davening yesterday, and we discussed what's unique and special about the sukkah davening. We mentioned the Hoshainas, which this year will only be on the second day of Yom Tov, because on the first day of Sukkot, it is going to be Shabbos this year, so you won't be able to do it. Let's go on from there. Of course, we conclude the holiday with Havdalah, as any Shabbos or Yom Tov always ends with Havdalah. Ladies and gents, please mute yourselves. It's very disruptive. Thank you. So, just a second. Let's get the screen back onto here. Spotlight. Thank you. Let's not disturb. Let's not interrupt, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, but thank you. So, sorry, I have to remind everyone every day. We're going to do questions every 10 minutes or so. Otherwise, it's very, very disruptive for the program. So you can take your notes, and then if you want to ask the question, mark it down. All right. You'll just mark it down, and I'll get back to you. You concluded Havdalah. That was the last point I said. Now from here, the next screen reminds me to talk about Chol HaMoed. Like you only have it on these two holidays, on Pesach as well as on Sukkot, where the intermediate section of the holiday is called Chol HaMoed. Now, if you like to go on outings and trips, especially if you're in Israel, you have a good solid Chol HaMoed this year. Not Pesach. Sukkot, you'll have a solid Chol HaMoed. Pesach will have a Shabbos in between. Not bad, but it's just different. But for Sukkot, we have a full week. In Israel, Sunday through Friday is Chol HaMoed. Here in South Africa or anywhere outside of Israel, will be Monday through Friday is the period known as Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days. And it's still a festival, but it's a weekday. You could drive your car, you can go on trips, you can use your phone, you can do all the things you need to do. So as you can see on the screen, you're allowed to use the phone, but you're not allowed to do. There are certain things that are actually not customarily done on Chol HaMoed. For example, mending garments, we're told not to be done. Basically things as needed. And instead, we should be spending this time focused on celebration and festive events. So that's a reminder that we're going to have our Chabad Senior Sukkot party on Tuesday. I have some more surprises for our Chabad Senior Sukkot party, ladies and gentlemen. Ivor Jaffe, you know him? The cantor, the great cantor of Mirror Road in Shul in Cape Town, is going to come and he's going to sing for us. Not only is Ivor Jaffe coming, we have the Jazz Club, a group. They're going to come with their instruments and they're going to give us a whole performance. So we're looking forward to that. Lots of fun. And our resident musician, Ronnie Leah, will hopefully also bring another partner with him. So we have lots of music, which indeed is the point of how we're going to be celebrating this festival, is with more music, just like we discussed yesterday, what the Simchas Beis HaShe'eva celebration was like back in the times of the temple. Throughout the period of Chol HaMoed, they would play the instruments and they would sing and dance and entertain and eat and have all types of events going on in Jerusalem, and the whole city would be lit up with these great grand luminary lights. And then just before sunrise, they would go down to the Shiluach well in Jerusalem. They would draw the water. And we discussed yesterday the significance and the difference between water versus wine. Wine libation symbolizes something that has depth and meaning and sophistication. That's one way of serving God, where we appreciate and understand and comprehend. But we also have to know where our comprehension, where our mind stops. I remember, and Miriam's very quiet today. I remember having this little discussion with you a long time ago, and I'm sure you concur. And that is, yes, we should apply our mind. God Almighty wants us to. We should learn all the scientific ideas and depth. And you can't understand Torah without science. And you probably also can't fully comprehend science without Torah, because you have to appreciate God is the master creator and the one who's the architect of the entire world. But at the same time, we have to realize where our mind stops, that's where our faith kicks in. And that's symbolized by the water. Water is tasteless, but water is the elixir of life. So don't forget that message that we discussed yesterday in greater detail. All right, ladies and gents, what we're going to do now is we're going to move into, besides for Chol HaMoed is time to enjoy, to relax. I don't think there's too much more I can tell you. You still say Hallel. We still do Hashanah every day that we did in the previous slide here. The Hashanah that we say circling the Bima each day of Chol HaMoed. I hope everyone managed to get themselves Lulav and Esrog sets, because there are so few in town. But we're going to move on now to the last day of Chol HaMoed, which is called Hoshana Rabbah. Questions? Yeah, I put my foot into my mouth. I know I did it, of course. Fascinating. Yeah. Brilliant. Wow. It's good to see that science is finally catching up. No. Yes. Yeah. During the week when it's not Yom Tov, it's not discouraged. You could definitely use it. During the service, it would be disrespectful and disruptive to the service of people using their phones and shielding the service. Question is if you're using it to daven. Now I remember when there was a renowned Jew in America named Shalom Rabashkin who was incarcerated. Unfortunately, it was a very, a controversial story because of his meat packing plant business. They did certain things that they weren't so kosher, but the judge was very heavy-handed and accused of anti-Semitism. The man wound up in jail for probably 10 years. He was supposed to be in jail for 30 years, according to what the verdict was. But then President Trump pardoned him and he was released early, about 4 years ago. And when he was released, he wound up in jail probably in 2008 or so, 2009, right? And then he gets released in 2019. And the thing is, when he was locked up, our smartphones weren't so advanced. So back then, our phones were pretty stupid. Yeah, the smartphones were really just coming out in like 2002. The first iPhone came out in 2007. It wasn't as technologically advanced as our current iPhones, right? So nobody was using a phone back then as a sitter to daven from. He gets out of jail 10 years later and he sees everybody's using their phones to daven with. So he said it was like a culture shock for him. But at the same time, he says, why don't we take our phones into the bathroom? We take our phones into other unsavory places. Davening should ideally be done with the sitter, but it's understandable sometimes the phone could be more convenient. And I will tell you, especially on Yom Tov, it's more convenient because the Hoshanas, when you're walking around the bima, you want to easily hold your sitter. And sometimes it's not so easy to hold your sitter and your Lulav and Esrog together. So it's probably ideal to use your phone for that purpose. But I would encourage everyone, put your phone on silence. You don't want to be that one person whose phone keeps on buzzing during davening and, has to talk out. The people are trying to talk to God and you have to have so let's keep that in mind. The importance of decorum, of respect. There's no halachic problem with using your phone on a weekday. But remember, other people are praying too. Turn it off. Turn it off. Well, what should you do? You tell me. What would you do in a movie theater? What would you do in a show? What would you do anywhere else where there's other people? This isn't a Jewish related matter. This is a basic etiquette. It's unmenschlich when that happens. Hey, we're a small crowd, we're tolerant, but in a shul, it's just not nice. And the shul's no different than any other public setting. Understand? It's a pet peeve of mine that people don't get it in shuls, and not just in shuls, anywhere. So it's important that people should have that in mind. Okay, that's not to mean offense to anybody here, God forbid. It is only, I'm talking about particularly, you're in a shul, the people are davening. Hello, I see this happen in my own shul, which is a small. Hello, what do you think? There's people praying here. I'm sorry that I'm getting agitated about it because it happens in the shul. People you know what? If you don't answer the call, the world won't fall apart. Of course, it's totally bit of it. Yeah. You don't have to tell us about that. That's nobody's business. Okay, that's not something that we have to be. Yeah. Listen, I don't think a shul needs to have policemen taking people's phones away. I think people have to be on their own, understanding what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. It's a desecration of the holiday. It's a desecration of it's a disrespect to the people in our surroundings. Oh, we shouldn't be doing that. Okay. The last day of Sukkot is called Hoshana Rabbah. Judaism teaches us that the final judgment related to rainfall during the coming year is something that is is decided on that day, on Hoshana Rabbah, which is going to be the coming Friday, a week from tomorrow. And that's why there are different traditions, special traditions that are related to the celebration, to the observance of that day. Before Hoshana Rabbah, what we have to do is collect or purchase 5 willow branches for each member of the household, and we bind them together. And this is something that is called klapping hoshainas, okay? We strip a branch off your lulav, and you're going to strip that branch around the 5 willow branches, And these strips are bound together into single bunches of 5 willow branches each. Many people have the custom of reading the entire book of Devarim, Deuteronomy of the Torah, on the night of Hoshana Rabbah, and saying the entire book of Tehillim before nightfall on the night of Hoshana Rabbah. So that will be the next week, Thursday night. Before we say Hallel, many people remove the rings that are directly around the lulav on the last day. After Hallel is when we do the Hoshanas, and although we say Hoshanas every day of Sukkot, but it's done differently on the last day. In the 6 previous days, we read only 1 paragraph per day. That is, and we make 1 revolution, 1 circuit around the bima. But on the last day, on Hoshana Rabbah, we actually do 7. We read 7 paragraphs and we circle the bima 7 times. And as we read each paragraph, we parade around the table and do the 7 hakafas around the bima. After the 7th paragraph, the concluding Hoshana's prayers are a specific, unique prayer for that day, in which we beseech God for a year of plenty and a year of rainfall. I have to be honest, I don't love the rain when I'm walking home from shul, so I say it only half-heartedly. But I was the chazan on Yom Kippur, and in the prayers of Yom Kippur, it says, Hashem should not listen to those who say it half-heartedly. So this is a very contradictory, self-conflicting matter that I got going on here. Either way, at the end of it, we do this very interesting ritual where we clap the Hoshanas. And what's that about? Excuse me. What's the idea? It's the idea of banging out the gevuras, the severity, or at least the spirit of severity that exists. We want a year not of discipline and severity and judgment, but a year of kindness and benevolence. Thank you. So, what do you do with your lulav? You put it, and the Hoshanas, we put it on top of the ark. You can see over here they do it, and our shul, it's a little bit more pronounced in the picture I'm showing on the screen as well. And the lulav, we actually keep it there till Pesach, and we're going to burn it with our chametz. Why do we burn it with the chametz? Very simply, because it was used for a mitzvah, we don't want to destroy it, we want to get rid of it. So what we do is we use it for the chametz burning ceremony. Yeah. 1 second, 1 at a time. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We didn't want the people to get flooded on the way home. But you're doing a reverse pilgrimage. You're going for the pilgrimage after the pilgrimage season. You're going to catch the tail end. You'll see the pilgrimage is leaving. What do you say, Jill? Sorry. Go ahead. About? Forgiveness. Oh, the fact is, okay, so there's a concept called bittul. Bittul means negation or self-abnegation, or maybe there's another word I'm looking for. Bittul. I had a word at the tip of my tongue and it disappeared from my head. But the point is
nullification.
Nullification. Yes, we want to nullify. We want to eliminate the severity, the discipline, the idea of gevura. So we're saying that this arava, when we're taking these 5 aravot, I really don't understand it completely myself. It's a mystical idea. It's a Kabbalistic custom. But the idea is that you're taking the arava, that is the least learned of the 5, remember, of the 4, because we said the etrog symbolizes a Jew who has lots of Torah study and lots of mitzvahs. The lulav is a person who studies Torah, no mitzvahs. The myrtle hadassim have a fragrance, so it symbolizes somebody does lots of good deeds and mitzvahs, but no taste. They don't study Torah, and the arava is bereft of them all. So the fact is that each of them has a unique identity, right? Each one has their own style, personality, and we're all different types of Jews. Now the arava is the way its unity, even though it doesn't have taste or smell, but the aravas grow together in bunches. So this underlines the power that even though I might think that who am I, and I'm self-negating my significance, but we have to remember that each of us makes a tremendous contribution. I like to use the example of the honey. You know, we still use honey every day of this festival all the way until the end of Sukkot. Now, honey comes from a bee. Besides for the idea that we discussed that the bee gives stings, We want to transform the stings of the year into sweetness. There's another important message and lesson. How much honey do you think one bee can produce? No, not even a teaspoon, a tablespoon, very little. So how many bees does it take for you to get your jar? Quite a few, exactly. And the idea is maybe my activity is so minuscule, maybe seems insignificant, but it's not insignificant, because if you take my effort and your effort and everyone in this room's effort, we'll all make a tremendous, significant difference. So don't underestimate the power that each of us can contribute in the ways that we can. Besides the point, the bees are always attracted to the flowers, whereas the flies go to the dung. So let's be like the bee. Let's go to the flowers. Let's go to the nice things, okay? Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that's a very profound point. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. That's a profound idea, and it's very important to keep that in mind. So we still do also you could say that maybe it's not a kosher insect, yet its product is kosher. Now let me ask you, if you get milk from a non-kosher animal, can you drink that milk? No. What if you got, I know somebody who doesn't even drink milk altogether. You know what he tells me? He says, how could I drink milk from a cow that once had meat in it? Just a joke. But that's a unique phenomenon, that the cow itself is fleshig, but its product is milk. Can you consume an egg that came from an unkosher animal, from an ostrich? Can you have ostrich eggs? No, where do you get that from? Of course you can't. Of course you can't, right? Wouldn't be allowed. You could have eggs from a kosher animal, but you can't from a hen. Goat is kosher. Yeah. Okay. The main point we're saying is that the holiday is a time to be celebrating, okay? And we have to remember that it's a time to be joyous and a time to be celebratory. And no doubt the celebrations of Sukkot don't end with Sukkot alone, because what happens after Sukkot? What are we going to go into next Friday night? We transition into the next holiday, which is called Shmini Atzeret. In Israel, it's Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah together, but it is a combination, it's combined, but in diaspora, it's Shmini Atzeret first and then Simchas Torah. So the holiday of Sukkot, it draws to a close it's like Hoshana Rabbah is the bridge next Friday. It's still a weekday. But Friday night, we have Shmini Atzeret. Now, Shmini Atzeret launches into Simchas Torah. I think these are the most joyous and celebratory days of the year. Shmini Atzeret can be translated as the eighth Atzeret. What would you, right here, come on, restriction. Atzeret means restriction, and Shmini is 8. So it's a restriction of the 8th day. And the simple meaning is that on the 8th day, we are restricted from working. It's like Shabbos again. In fact, this year it is on Shabbos. Now, to understand this, in the temple during the 7 days of Sukkot, Jews brought a total of 70 bullock offerings to pray for the 70 nations of the world. You're going to see this in the prayers that we start to mention on Shabbos, first day of Sukkot. Now, of course, there are more than 70 nations of the world. If you're going to check at the UN, there's a lot more. But the concept that the Talmud says is that since we all descend from Noach, he and his family were the sole survivors of the deluge, of the great flood. And the Torah enumerates 70 nations that established by Noach's descendants, so we consider them the root nations of all people. And the Jewish nation stands alone because although we too descend from Noach, our nation is not included in the Torah's 70 nation count. We stand apart, we stand separate from them. And so therefore, although the rest of Sukkot, we're going to bring offerings for all the nations of the world, right? But on Shmini Atzeret, only one offering was brought, and that represents the Jewish nation. So Shmini Atzeret celebrates the unique relationship between God and us. And the Medrash, Rashi says, let me go back to Rashi here. Rashi says, this is like children taking leave of their father. And their father says, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to part with you. For my sake, please postpone your departure. Remain with me for one more day. You know, you ever go to visit your family And it's too quick. I booked the ticket to Australia. I haven't booked my return yet, but my plan is to be there for about 3-4 days. And better than some of my siblings. I have one brother's going for 1 day. He said he can't leave his family, but we want to be there for the wedding. So he's going for 1 day. Even 3 days, I think it's Meshuggah. You know what the ticket costs to go somewhere for 3 days? But then again, you have family here. Imagine you go to visit your father, and your father says, you know what? Postpone your ticket. 1 more day, stay with me. For 7 days, every nation of the world is represented in our celebrations and all the sacrifices. At the end of Sukkot, when the party is about to end and we're about to go home, God asks us, God says, remain with me 1 more day. Enjoy a more intimate party. The previous days, there was all the other people around, the hoodoo capoodle, the ministers, all the different things going on. But now, the 8th day, this is a time for us to be celebrating. And this is, I think, an important point that we have to keep in mind, that Shmini Atzeret, the sacrifices brought, was one sacrifice symbolizing, representing our unique relationship with Hashem. And this is something the Medrash tells us, that it's a day to absorb, to internalize this depth so that we can become integrated and take all the buckets of merchandise that we sort of picked up in the last few weeks, right? We had Rosh Hashanah, we had 10 days of repentance, we had Sukkot, we had the whole month of Elul before. All of this is spiritual buckets. Like somebody goes into the marketplace. You go into a marketplace, you buy all types of tchotchkes and souvenirs and things, and now you're collecting it all on the final days to bring it home with you. So we want to internalize the message. And a unique thing here is, what does Shmini mean? 8. 7 symbolizes the natural order, right? Things are as they are naturally. But Shmini, the 8th, represents transcendence, above the natural order. So while 7 is the cycle of creation, 8 is transcendental. Shmini Atzeres means we're absorbing the transcendental. We are taking with us all of that inspiration that we gained in the past month. And although it's called Shmini, the 8th, it isn't the 8th day of Sukkot. It is really an independent festival. Sukkot was about praying for the entire world, but Shmini Atzeres is focused on ourselves in that sense. So while it's a continuation of the previous holiday, it's also independent of the previous holiday. And on Shmini Atzeres, we no longer have the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, although Chabad custom, we do sit in the sukkah. Okay? There are different names for it, actually. It has a different name. It's not Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. In the Kiddush, as well as in our davening, we refer to it differently, Shmini Atzeret HaChag Hazeh, right? We're not referring to it as Sukkot any longer. And which is why we say the bracha Shehechianu. If the last day of Pesach, do we say Shehechianu? No. But on the last days of Sukkot, we do say Shehechianu because it's a new holiday. It is its own independent holiday, even though it has an extension of Sukkot, right? On Sukkot, we recite Shehechianu every day because there are different numbers of kabbanas each day, of sacrifices that were offered. Not because each day is an independent Yom Tov, but it had a unique aspect each day. On Shmini Atzeres, we recite Shehechianu because it is an independent, autonomous holiday. Obviously linked to Sukkot too, that's why it's called Shmini, because it is the 8th day, an extension, but it's not directly the same holiday. It is its own holiday. In Israel, as we said, Shmini Atzeret on